Let us begin by reading the word problem out loud. The number of points scored by a basketball player is determined by combining the number of 1-point, 2-point, and 3-point baskets made throughout the game. A player made 19 baskets and scored a total of 40 points. If the player made 4 1-point baskets, how many 2-point and 3-point baskets did he score? Let us begin our strategy for problem solving by analyzing the problem. Keep in mind that the first thing you want to do when analyzing the problem is identify the question that's being asked. In this case, we're being asked, how many 2-point and 3-point baskets did he score? So now that we know what it is we're looking for, we know what our unknown variables are going to represent. So let us go ahead and jump to step 2 and assign the variables. For this problem, we'll go ahead and use the variables x and y, and we'll let them represent the following. So x will represent the amount of 2-point baskets he scored, and y will represent the amount of 3-point baskets he scored. So now that we've finished assigning a variable and taking care of step 2, let us go back to step 1 and continue analyzing the problem. So we know that the player made 19 baskets overall, so that's going to be a key number there, 19. And the units are going to be very important for us, baskets. And then we also know that he scored a total of 40 points. So 40 is definitely important for us, but along with that, the corresponding units of 40 points. So the last sentence tells us a little bit more information, and it tells us that the player made 4 1-point baskets. Now keep in mind that if you made 4 1-point baskets, that means that 4 points came from these baskets because each one is worth 1 point. So the number of points that came from 1-point baskets is 4. And then just something very important to note, we know that the number of points scored by a player is determined by combining the number of 1-point, 2-point, and 3-point baskets made throughout the game. So there's 3 different types of baskets you can make: a 1-point basket, a 2-point basket, and a 3-point basket, and each one is worth its specific amount of points. So let us go ahead and start forming an equation. So now we're going to have 2 separate equations since we have 2 separate variables, and one thing to keep in mind is units for this word problem. There's 2 things that are being talked about, one being baskets and the other one being actual points. So one equation is going to represent a basket equation and the other equation is going to represent a points equation. So now let's focus on the basket equation. So we're going to be using the red, which says a player made 19 baskets, and we're also going to be using the yellow, which says that 4 1-point baskets were made. So let's start off with the 19. So we know that there was a total of 19 baskets made. Now there's a total of 19 baskets made. This is going to be a sum of the number of 1-point baskets made, 2-point baskets made, and 3-point baskets made. Luckily, we could have a representation for each one of them. The number of 1-point baskets made is 4. That was given to us. And we want to add to that the number of 2-point baskets made, which is represented by variable x since we don't know that value. And then we're going to also add to that the number of 3-point baskets made, which is represented by the variable y. So there we go. We have a total of 19 baskets made, and this is a sum of 1-point, 2-point, and 3-point baskets. So now let us move on to the blue. We know that the player scored a total of 40 points. So 40 points is a total point value. And now this is going to be equal to the number of baskets made multiplied by the corresponding point value for that specific basket. So let me tell you what I mean by that. So for the 1-point baskets, each basket is worth 1 point, and we know that there were 4 of those made. So we're going to multiply it by 4. And now we're going to add to that the 2-point baskets. So we know that each 2-point basket is worth 2 points. And now we want to multiply that by the number of 2-point baskets made, which is x. And now the last one is the number of 3-point baskets. And we know that each 3-point basket is worth 3 points. And then we multiply the value of 3 by the number of 3-point baskets made, which is y. So those are going to be our two equations. So now that we've created our equation, let's go ahead and solve them. I'll start off by bringing them down. So there we go. And now the first thing that you want to notice is that we have constants on both sides of the equation for each equation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all the constants to one side of the equation and get the variables by themselves on the opposite side. So I'll subtract 4 from both sides of the equation for the first equation, and that's going to give us, that'll give us 15 on the left hand side. And then on the right hand side, the positive 4 and the negative 4 simplify out, leaving us with x plus y. Similarly, on the right hand side of the equation, I'm going to go ahead and subtract 4 from both sides as well, and that's going to give us the following. So simplifying down both sides of the equation, on the left, 40 minus 4 is going to give us 36. And on the right hand side, the positive 4 and the negative 4 are going to simplify out to give us 2x plus 3y. So now we're going to focus on the first equation since it has coefficients of 1 in front of the x and the y, so it's easier to work with. We're going to go ahead and choose one of the variables to isolate. I'm going to go ahead and isolate x. So if I want to get the x by itself, I want to get rid of this plus y. The only way to do so is by subtracting y from both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract y from both sides of the equation. So now when we simplify each side of the equation, on the right hand side, the positive y and the negative y simplify out, leaving us just x. And on the left hand side, we end up with 15 minus y. So now we have the x variable completely by itself, and we know that it is equal to 15 minus y. So we're going to go ahead and plug that in to the second equation. So plugging that in is going to give us the following. So we end up with 36 is equal to 2 times 15 minus y, since that is the value of x, plus 3y. So now we're going to want to distribute that 2 to the 15 and the minus y, and then we're going to end up with 36 is equal to 30 minus 2y plus 3y. Simplifying the negative 2y plus the 3y, we end up with a single y, so that's going to give us 36 is equal to 30 plus y. And now we want to get the y completely by itself, so we want to undo this addition of 30. Only way to undo it is through subtraction, so we're going to subtract 30 from both sides. So on the left hand side, we end up with 6, and that's going to be equal to 30 minus 30 leaves us with simply y. So we end up with y is equal to 6, and now we're going to plug this in to the first equation and get the value of x. So we end up with 15 minus 6 is equal to x, and therefore x is equal to 9. So we have the value of x and y, so let's go ahead and substitute those into our conclusion. Since the question was how many 2-point, 3-point baskets did he score, we'll state it as the following. He scored 9 2-point baskets and 6 3-point baskets. So now let's go ahead and check the result. We always want to start off with the original equations found in step 3. That is 19 is equal to 4 plus x plus y, and 40 is equal to 4 plus 2x plus 3y. Now we substitute the corresponding values for x and y, and that's going to give us the following. So now let's go ahead and simplify both sides of the equation for the first equation. For the first equation, we end up with 19 is equal to 19. So that verifies that our first equation is correct. And now plugging it into the second equation, we get a simplified form of 40 is equal to 4 plus 18 plus 18. And when we simplify both sides of the equation, we get 40 is equal to 40, which verifies that our solution is correct.